Alright, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh, and a very good morning to all of you. We are grateful to Allah Subhanahu wa Taala for His grace and love that we can gather together in this glorious and blessed Friday morning. It is my pleasure to welcome all of you to this webinar this morning. Thank you so much, everyone, for participating. Ladies and gentlemen, to bless our program this morning, let us all pray to Allah Subhanahu wa Taala so that everything we get in this webinar brings benefit to us as well as other human beings. Before we start, let's open our webinar session today with Surah Al-Fatiha.
Amin, 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 ya Rabbal Alamin. Before we proceed, can you guys see why are we wearing blue in colors for today? Because it's April and it is World Autism Awareness Day. And it is lined with our discussion for today, which is disability inclusion and sustainable development goals. Ladies and gentlemen, our webinar on this Friday morning is entitled Disability Inclusion and Sustainable Development Goals, which focusing on 11th SDG, Sustainable Cities and Communities. Disability inclusion, according to Center for Disease Control and Prevention 2020, it means that including persons with disabilities in everyday activities, encouraging them to have the same roles as typical people, making sure everybody has the same opportunities to participate in every aspects of life. Okay, so we will be further discussing about this topic in this webinar with our respective speaker. For your information, at the end of this webinar, we will have a 15-minute Q&A session. So if you have any questions or any concerns, you are welcome to ask during the Q&A session, or you may put the question in the chat box. All questions will be answered by our speaker at the end of this webinar.
Before we begin, let us all know our great speaker first, Associate Professor Dr. Izawati Tukiman. For your information, Dr. Izawati Tukiman is one of the dedicated lecturers from Department of Landscape Architecture, Kuliah of Architecture and Environmental Design. Therefore, for further information, I would like to invite Dr. Izawati to tell us a little bit about herself. Please welcome.
Okay, Assalamualaikum to all. As being introduced by your friends here, my name is Izawati Tukiman and I am a lecturer from Department of Landscape Architecture, Kuliah of Architecture and Environmental Design. And nothing much that I can share with you because I am just an ordinary person, but I would like to introduce myself as a mother of 6 children, and 3 of them were diagnosed with dyslexia. I'm living with 3 kids, 3 special kids, plus another 3. So I have 6 at home, and one of these 3 children is comorbidity. Comorbidity is a situation which he has a dyslexia, but he is also autistic. And I have been with IIUM for more than 20 years. I think that will be an introduction.
Okay, Doctor. So I think everyone here is looking forward to gain more knowledge this morning, and we are also excited to hear from you. So without further ado, I will proceed to the next question, which is, how have you contributed in relation to SDG 11 for person with disabilities in terms of investment in public transport or creating public spaces or improving urban planning and inclusive ways? What is your experience in all this?
Okay. I believe that everybody is aware that SDG 11 represent making cities and human settlement inclusive, safe, resilient, and sustainable. And for your information, in K8, we have K8 Universal Design Unit, also known as KUDU, which was led by Datuk Sri Professor Architect Dr. Asia Abdul Rahim. And I was with KUDU since 2009 until now. It was almost 12 years. And with Kudu, I get involved with research and consultation related to PWDs, such as planning for PWDs, accessibility and access auditing on building and public spaces, which covers indoors and outdoors. And some of my experience, this is what I can share. This is just to name a few. I have been auditing recently. I have been auditing our RMC building last Tuesday, and then 3 schools in Lembah Kelang last Sunday. And then I have also an experience auditing Pasar Siti Khadijah in Kelantan, Kota Kinabalu Waterfronts in Sabah, Putrajaya Transportation Terminal, Terminal Bersepadu Selatan. This is just to name a few. We have done since 2009. Just imagine how many places that we have been, and each time we will audit in a year almost more than 20 buildings and outdoor. And this is just a brief information for you. Access audit is an audit procedure to assess a building or outdoor spaces against best practice standards to benchmark its accessibility to disabled people, whether they can come in or not, whether they can go there or not. And in Malaysia, we are using MS 1184 2014. It was revised in 2014, which is universal design and accessibility in the built environment. And concerning to SDG 11, these are just some examples that I would like to share with you based on my experience. How it can explain the importance of accessibility for PWDs in relation to SDG 11. First, as I mentioned earlier, last Sunday, I've audited 3 schools. So this is basically because we have a zero reject policy in our education system. Are you aware of that? And the policy was in line with our government initiatives towards the right to education for everybody. But if we fail to improve our transportation systems, none of our PWD's friends will access schools, colleges, and universities because of the flawed transportation system. And another example that you can you might experience too is, do we provide sufficient accessible parking? You went out and can you see do you notice any accessible parking? If you are students, can you allocate the nearest accessible toilet? Do you have difficulties spotting one? Is it because there were poor wayfinding, in which no signages were provided to show directions? Just as simple as that. Sometimes we ignore something simple, but the simple things that we can do is the biggest contribution to our disabled friends. And then, and if you find the toilet, does the accessible toilet design based on MS 1184 standard? For example, if wheelchair user want to use the restroom, can they close the toilet door to privacy? Sometimes because they need to get into the toilet with the wheelchair. Can they close the door? Can. And in another situation, if you met a person with hearing impairment asking for help because he can't find the library, this is maybe the situation in our campus. How can you help them? Do you have any ideas? You might not able to communicate with them because you don't know any basic sign language. So you might need to enroll now. I think the SU is providing a course on sign language. But the most simple way or the most easiest way for you to entertain your hearing impaired friend is using paper and pen. Because they can write and you can give feedbacks immediately or show the plans, how to go to the library. That is as simple as that. But we need some knowledge and awareness to do that. Yeah. However, this is just a few situations that might happen in a small campus community. We are just in a small campus community. Have you ever thought of how they survive once they step out of their home? Let's say they live in Taman Melawati. For PWDs that can drive, they might need accessible parking to park their car. Those who travel with Grabs might need a driver that has a knowledge to assist them. For example, if you have hearing impaired, and then the drivers, can they communicate with you? Or if you are using a wheelchair, does the driver knows how to close the wheelchair, or to help you to transfer you from the wheelchair to the cars, and then from the cars to the wheelchair? So this kind of things is such a simple, sometimes which public might forget the importance of their awareness and knowledge that might give some, what we call, um, some a great impact to others. Okay, and then but all these services might come with additional costs. But if we can provide better transportation services, they will help them a lot, because they can commute from one place to another place and save. Okay, second, before I elaborate more on creating green public spaces, let me share some of my experience during auditing KK Waterfront in Sabah. So as a consultant, when we did the SS audit, I have to bring PWD's representative along with me. Usually PWD's representative is the end user that will give me their feedbacks on the accessibility during the auditing process. So during the group distributions, many PWDs volunteers and requested to be with my groups. At that time, I was pretty curious. Why? Because it left just me and my friends. He is from the local authority, to handle a group of person with various disability. We have CPs, we have wheelchair users, we have hearing impact, we have visual impact, various type of disability. And since I'm too curious, so I asked them why. And for your information, they told me that they wanted to visit the waterfront very much, but there was no accessibility. And they felt that the program was an opportunity for them to go to KK Waterfront, sort of like killing two birds with one stone. And people used to say, seeing is believing. When we were there, I can experience how difficult it was to get them access to the waterfront, especially the wheelchair user, because he and his assistant have to walk next to a busy road, because there was no curb ramp, the ramp, and the curb level was quite high. We have to carry him up. This experience is an example in which you can see that our PWD's friends have to go through difficulties before getting to a park or any public spaces. They also want to have social interaction with others and nature too. Another stories of my friends, he's also a wheelchair user. What he want to do is to use an ATM machines, but he cannot go to the nearest ATM machine to his house. He need to drive quite a distance to another ATM machines, because that ATM machine is the only machine that have accessibility for them. So these are things that we sometimes people cannot see how difficult they have to go through all these kind of things. And third, an inclusive city needs to guarantee equal rights and participation of all its dwellers. They are empowered to participate fully in the social, economic, cultural, political opportunities that cities have to offer. However, look into the point that I have pointed out earlier. Do you think that we have provided an equal platform for PWDs. This is where local authorities such as Putrajaya Corporation and Majlis Bandaraya Petaling Jaya has come out to turn their cities into the accessible and CCT. So, if I'm not mistaken, last 2 years, we in Kudu was involved with MBPJ planning for accessible city. So we come up with quite extensive report on how to make Petaling Jaya an accessible city and a safe city. So, where did I stop just now? Okay. Basically, what you can see, this is based on Petaling Jaya, which most of the development is not a new development. Basically, Petaling Jaya, they have a portion which they have an old development buildings, and this is what you can see happen in Jalanta, which they have this old colonial building or pre-war or building that the old building, because those buildings cannot fully accessed by PWDs, such as the one in Jalanta shops. The shop is not accessible, but the layout itself was also too packed and difficult to maneuver. In fact, for us, normal people. Okay, and this is something that I want to share. All of this is my experience during doing auditing and during doing we need to be friend with our PWDs because they are a part of our members, auditing members. So I have a friend who live in PJ and he's in a wheelchair. He told me that he used to go to PJ Old Town wet market, but now he can only send his wife and wait in his car because the market cannot be accessed by wheelchair. However, another friend of mine was also in a wheelchair and he lives in Putrajaya, which is a new township. He told me that the city planning made him easier to lead his daily life. In fact, he was allowed to voice out his opinion on any development that happened there. This an example of result of evolution from a different development era. So this is some of experience that have gone throughout my what we call involvement doing all these things related with PWDs.
All right. So basically, from what Dr. Izawati has shared with us, I can simply say that she is someone who has a lot of experience dealing with persons with disabilities. And from the examples that has been provided by Dr. Izawati, I can simply say that there are things that we are not being aware of. There are things that we are not focusing on, which we need to pay attention on. So basically, the next question is, how are Malaysia's public transport, urban planning, and green public places inclusive for persons with disabilities? And maybe, in your opinion, what need to be improved?
Okay, this is based on my opinion. There is still a need for room for improvement. Most of our public transport is equipped with PWD's facilities, especially if you can see new rapid buses, they have all these designated place for wheelchair user, or they have a designated sitting space for other types of disabilities. But I believe because I believe you had seen the bus that can be lowered down to allow the bus level at the same level of the bus stop. This is because they are using the hydraulic system, so that's why they can push the bus to the lowest that they can be. But the one that they can lower down is a standard height, into a standard height. However, we need more than PWD's friendly transportations. We need PWD support facilities such as the bus stop itself, because some bus stop does not have any ramp, and or the curb of the bus stop itself is quite high or too low, which not suitable for the buses with removable ramp or the bus with hydraulic systems, because they can't get into a actual level that they're supposed to do to have, or the bus with the flipping ramp, the ramp that they have in front of the bus door, which can be flipped into the curb. If it is too low, the ramp will be very steep. Okay, if the curb is too low, the ramp will be very steep. But if it is too high, the ramp will be going up. So how are they going to wheel their wheelchair? So it's quite difficult. And then, as I mentioned earlier, there's our drivers or Grab drivers have been trained to assist a blind person or a hearing impaired person. So these are things that might be sometimes slip from the one that they are currently doing. So okay, actually, the most important part that I would like to highlight here is that bus stop design should follow standard as outlined in MS 1184. So how high is the curb design, where to put the ramps, all those kind of things. And then to have an efficient transportation system which friendly to PWDs, we need to have good supporting facilities, proper planning and management. These support facilities such as ramp is also applicable to Grab or taxis. And on top of that, drivers should also have knowledge and awareness on how to assist their PWDs customer. Well, it is about time local authority look into upgrading their territory into a safe city or accessible city. And this is to make sure that it can be an inclusive city. And I believe many local authorities are looking into this matter seriously, because it is quite crucial to ensure that the planning is inclusive, because PWDs are also Malaysian resource of human capital. Some were skilled worker, subject matter expertise, and some also have great talent and excellent skills. That's why the government should look into this matter seriously, because we cannot waste our valuable resources. They will help to boost our economy. So that's why we need to give them a proper platform for them to contribute their expertise, their skills, and so on. On the other hand, I would like to alert our audience here on our living surrounding. I believe that most of us living in Kuala Lumpur and Selangor, or some might come from other cities such as Johor Bahru, Kuantan, or Ipoh. I think you could see that we are facing rapid development and our access to green spaces is minimal. It's very minimal. However, due to the increase in awareness of a healthy lifestyle, maybe many urban dwellers are going to park, even though they have to travel quite some distance. But still, not all green spaces can be accessed by PWDs. Either it is not equipped with PWDs facilities, or poor transportation services restricted them to do so. And as a citizen of Malaysia, how can you participate? Basically, all citizens in Malaysia have their right to give an opinion on any development plan, because in the Town and Country Planning Act 1976, see, 1976, and now it's 2021. It has been there for a very long time. Of Act 172 opens up an opportunity for public involvement in planning, because in Act 172 gives the public the general allowance to participate in the development preparation process early stage, which in this stage, the people are encouraged to share their opinions on the planning development. The impact is more substantial than when the local authority completed the draft plan in previous practice. This practice is where we should play our role as a responsible member of society. We can highlight the needs for accessibility if it is not included in any proposed development plan. I wanted to highlight here that to ensure our city's sustainability and resilient, knowledge and awareness among public members are very, very important. We play very important roles to help our PWD's friends. Okay, if you ask me, is there any development have been cancelled due to public voice? Yes. It happened to Kuala Lumpur 2020 draft plan. You can browse it on internet. You can see how people voice out about the development. So you can do so. You can help our government to improve the development. Any development, in fact, the local authority is always have their renewing their local draft plan. So you need to participate. Otherwise, it will be continue without any types of facility, because you have knowledge. Some might not aware, so you can remind them of what you are concerned most. Okay. And then, although it sounds like we have a long way to go, I believe that we are now is moving forward. We can see lots of initiatives have been done, and I am very grateful that you managed to conduct a webinar to increase public knowledge and awareness. These are all initiatives that can benefit by PWDs. Congratulations. I think that's all.
Okay, Doctor. Okay, thank you. Okay, so as what Doctor said, and as we are aware that every facilities is actually provided by the PWDs, but there's still many places that is not accessible for them. So what are the challenges in transforming this public transportation, green public places, and urban planning to be inclusive to them? Because we know, for example, like any mall or anywhere else, they have reserved the you parking, or they have in public transportation they have a seat reserved for the disabled people. But there's still irresponsible people who take the parking, the places, the seat. So how do we tackle this issue, Doctor? And what are the challenges to make sure this to be inclusive for the PWDs?
Okay. Financial will be a vast challenge because our cities have been developed earlier. That is what I've mentioned earlier. So we have pre-walks, buildings, and to improve and make it inclusive, we need to spend more on demolitions and constructions, which this will incur lots of costs. However, suppose we can include an inclusive approach in any new development. This might help the government in terms of to have more cities inclusive instead of it remain with the old types of developments which does not give any accessibility to PWDs. In that case, that will be a great help to PWDs and other members of society, because for me, inclusive safe city is not just for PWDs. It's also for children, pregnant mothers, elderly. So this is why we need to fight for inclusive city and make sure that they can access any places safely. Um, on the other hand, or another point that I think that will be uh, can be done as soon as possible, because when we talk about construction, it might be taking quite some times because we need to undergo all the tendering, all this constructions, all those kind of things. But the most fastest initiative that can be done is that we should encourage our community to participate in any public hearing activities for new development or new proposal for the local plan done by the local authority, as I shared earlier. And also, we need to increase knowledge and awareness among our society. This statement does not mean that our community does not have any knowledge or understanding. I would say here that we need to encourage our society to seek more knowledge, additional knowledge. For example, sign language will enable them to communicate with those with hearing impairment, or learn to conduct brain gym, or teach phonics, which it is very applicable to those with learning disabilities. And with that kind of knowledge, you can volunteer to be part of those who contribute their uh, CSR in NASOM, Persatuan Dyslexia Malaysia, there's many more, Kiwanis. Because of this kind of knowledge, you can contribute to the society. And for example, this is just my personal opinion. I believe the members of the society can help to ease all these difficulties. Sometimes we did not notice that we have denied the PWD's right. For example, as mentioned by Dini earlier, sometimes we can see that the pedestrian walk was blocked by motorcycles, or irresponsible car drivers block the ramp. So we need to change to allow these transformations. And we need to understand or participate in helping our PWD's friends to get their right to accessibility or inclusion. It's a paradigm shift to us to change. First, we need to change, and this will give a huge impact to them. Sometimes people might ask whether, what can I contribute? Well, just remember that sometimes the smallest contribution can give a big implication to PWD's friends. That's all.
All right. So, from what Dr. Izawati said, I can say that among the challenges for us in dealing with this issue is the financial issue, and we need the support from the public as well to make the PWDs inclusive. So basically, our next question will be focusing on the government effort. So basically, what can the government do to ensure that SDG 11 targets are met? I mean, it's like how to make sure that the human settlement is inclusive, resilient, and others.
Well, as I mentioned earlier, we have the Town and Planning Act since 1976. And I believe the government has come up with lots of acts and policy, and we have many with us. But I would say it's enforcement and monitoring. The enforcement and monitoring will be what can be done now. We have acts and policies that need to be enforced and monitored by respected authorities. As member of the public, we should give our very best cooperations. However, many government agencies have put lots of initiative to improve and make our city inclusive. For your acknowledgement, such as Sirim itself keep updating the MS 1184 from time to time, which I was also one of the committee involved to review MS 1184 this year. And then we have JPOKU under Kementerian Wanita. We have been working with, which have been working with IUM to conduct an access audit on existing building and public spaces. Basically, every year we will do auditing on basically mostly on government buildings and some on public, together with some public buildings. And then we also have JPOKU together with IIUM and PAM, Persatuan Arkitek Malaysia, also conducting a training of trainers, or short for professionals involved in built environment on designing places and areas that are to allow them to design places and areas that can be assessed by PWDs. So we keep on training others because in Malaysia itself we have millions of buildings, billions of buildings, I think, and it need to be improved from time to time. But and we need more professionals to have awareness on this kind of issues, especially on the accessibility. The same goes. It is not just Persatuan Arkitek Malaysia who train their members with this auditing knowledge. We also train staff from KPKT, Kementerian Perumahan dan Kerajaan Tempatan, which also have put an initiative to train their staff with knowledge on PWDs and accessibility. This is basically staff from local authority, because nowadays they have imposed that each local authority have to have a unit or division that check on the new development plan, which they need to check whether the plan meet the requirement for PWD's accessibility. And then I think this is a very good what we call things that, or initiative that have been done by our government. They start to do the enforcement and monitoring. So inshallah, we are in our right track, but although it's still a long way to go, but at least we have start. Yeah.
Yeah, understood, madam. So as what doctor said, smallest contribution of us could give a huge impact to the PWDs, right? Okay, and also a lot of societies such as Persatuan Arkitek Malaysia, JPOKU, NASOM, and many more have done their part. So what about IIUM, madam, our universities? Are there any initiative made by the university in terms of improving these aspects in relation to SDG 11?
Well, based on statistic posted in the SU website, I think we have more than 80 students with disabilities, and I am proud to tell you that IIUM is among the first universities that have established the Disabled Service Unit, or the SU, to help students and staff with disabilities. And the SU together with Kudu has conducted an access audit in some of our building and Gombak and Kuantan. Inshallah, in the future, maybe we will go to Pago. This initiative is to improve accessibility in the IIUM campus and make this university inclusive. In fact, what you did today, the webinar, is a platform that you and your friends initiated to promote knowledge and awareness and allow this campus community to understand how they can participate and support SDG 11 as well. That's very good.
Yeah, that's right. Because what this webinar can be one of the interesting initiative by our university in spreading the awareness on this issue. So the next question is, like Madden has talked before about the policies by the government. So there, basically, are there laws, policies, and action plans to ensure that these aspects are inclusive of persons with disabilities in Malaysia?
Okay, yes, we have. In fact, Malaysia is committed to few declarations such as Convention on the Rights of the Child, Universal Declaration of Human Rights, International Covenants on Economic and Social and Cultural Rights, Asian Human Rights declarations, and under Malaysia Acts itself, we have the Federal Constitution of Malaysia, Article 8. It's about equality. All persons are equal before the law. And we have Article 12, right in respect of educations. And we also have Person with Disabilities Act 2008. And then in terms of policy, Malaysia have a few guidelines such as Dasar Orang Kurang Upaya, which initiated by Jabatan Kebajikan Masyarakat. And then the Zero Reject Policy itself by Ministry of Education. 1% PWD staff at all government agencies policies. I believe that we have extensive acts and policies for PWDs. Still, we need to provide a better conducive and safe city environment to ensure that all these can be implemented efficiently. We need to ensure that the city environment is safe and accessible. For example, how can we implement the first the 1% PWD staff to work in the government sector if they cannot access their workplace? Have you been to Research Management Center, RMC? Okay, try to go there. Because they have 3 different levels, and last Tuesday when I bring a team of members to audit the buildings, what happened is that based on my observations, the wheelchair can only reach the ground floor because there was no lift, and one of the member was a dwarf. So since that, although it has a staircase, a comfortable staircase, but our friends here cannot go up to the 3rd floor because of his proportion is not suitable to climb a stairs, especially up until level 3. So this is something that we have in front of our eyes. But now I'm preparing my report, so inshallah I will try my best to come up with a very conducive report how we can improve our RMC. So this is to allow not only PWDs, our senior lecturers with some limitations. In fact, me myself, I have difficulties in terms of, it's quite difficult for me to climb because of my age, and then in fact I have sleep days. So those kind of things will limit us by the time we reach certain age. So this is why accessibility is very, very important. This is to make everybody can enjoy the same city, okay. Okay, so based on my question, last question, how can we implement the 1% PwC staff to work in the government sector if they cannot access their workplace? And once we manage to improve our city, we also need better planning on how to sustain it. Everything needs to be sustained, to be maintained. So we need to have a good management and a good planning to ensure that everybody can be intact, or can be saved. This is why we need a sustainability in every facilities that we provide. So we need to plan on how to manage all the facilities. For example, the hydraulic bus need to have regular maintenance. There was once when I did my audit in one transportation hub. We were transported to the venue by a hydraulic bus. The hydraulic bus that they use is not the one that can lower it down, or not that types of bus. This bus is a special bus which they have a platform, a hydraulic platform, which can, the wheelchair can go on top of the platform and be lifted down or lifted up into the bus, because the bus have steps, So what happened is that when we are going back to our base, this is where the tragic happens. Unfortunately, while my friends with a wheelchair are lifted to the bus, the bus unregular maintenance caused the collapse of hydraulic platform. And it's happened, he fell from it. You just imagine, he was on a wheelchair and he fell from the platform to the ground. Alhamdulillah, he was not severely injured, and this is why I would like to stress here, maintenance of all facilities is part of management and planning to ensure it's safe to be used. Yes, you provide the facilities, but if it is not well maintained, how can you sustain the facilities? How can you ensure it is safe? Therefore, we need to ensure that we should have better management, continuous in the planning itself. All of this will help PWDs to be more resilient in the future. Okay, I think maintenance is the something that need to continuously plan ahead to ensure all the facilities is in a good conditions, because safety is very, very important. It can injure a person. That's all.
Right, madam. I agree with you. Okay. So I think everyone need to practice disability inclusion and need to aware of this, because we live in the same country, in the same city. So it is not fair if the PWDs does not get the same facilities as the typical people. Okay. So this is the last question from me. Apa tu? Okay, so in your opinion, why should we practice this disability inclusion? Is it just because we want to give them the same roles and opportunities like typical people, or do you have any other opinion on why everyone need to practice this disability inclusion?
Okay, I will see it can be benefit PWDs and also us. Why? As I mentioned earlier, everybody is counting age every year, and we get older. Our strength and ability can be slightly poor as compared to when we were young. We have mom to be that might have limitation in their movement and stability. Or we have a family with babies and children, little brothers and sisters. We are sharing and setting foot on the same ground as sky. Therefore, we should ensure that our living surroundings are safe for everybody. What I would like to highlight here, that once we age, aging elderly, they have limitation in terms of movement, they have a limitation in terms of their strength, and in fact they have limitation in terms of their sight and their hearings. So this one day might be happen to us. We need to face all these kind of things. That's why we need to prepare our cities to be inclusive. This is not just for our PWD's friend. This is also for us, for our children. It's for everybody.
Yeah, it's right. So basically, I can say that we have to practice disability inclusion because of humanity, right? Because it is for us also, not only for them. So basically, this will be the last question from me for Dr. Izawati. So basically, from what you have shared, we can see that you have a vast experience and you're getting involved in a lot of projects regarding this method. So basically, what are your future plans in this field?
Well, it's almost 11. I'm so sorry that I took too much time explaining lots of things. Well, I will continue with my current activities and I do hope that I can contribute more. I want to share more with others. I want to do more audit, and I wanted to see not only my PWD's friend have an inclusive living surrounding, but we also can live in a safe and conducive environment. For your, as I mentioned earlier, I do have 3 special kids, so I want them to be living in a safe surrounding. I want them to be safe. Yeah, that's all.
Yeah, it's such a great one. So basically, as I mentioned before, that was my last question because we are already near to 11 a.m. So Alhamdulillah, a very nice sharing from a great speaker with great experience. So we would like to thank Associate Professor Dr. Izawati Tukiman for answering all of our questions. May we all benefit from the sharing, inshallah.
Alright, so now we will continue to the Q&A session, and we have one question from Nurul Huda. She asked how an individual like me can contribute in ensuring the disabled people is included in this goal.
Well, as mentioned earlier, the smallest contribution might give a big implication to disable. So don't worry, you can contribute in many ways. Sometimes we can see that we don't have a skills to construct ramps or those kind of things. You don't have to. But what you can do is to share your knowledge. That is one of the biggest contribution that you can do. Share what you have here from today's webinar or in a future webinar series that you will have with your friends here. So I think you need to share the information, distribute it. Inshallah, this will give more awareness to our society, and this will allow us to live in a better city, more inclusive. We have our own role, kan? Then inshallah we will have the what we want. We will achieve the SDG 11 if everybody participated. Inshallah.
Inshallah. So basically, I can say that educating people and creating awareness on this issue is very important, right? So thank you, Dr. Izawati, for answering the question from gentlemen. We are now at the end of today's webinar. Me, Nur Shafika binti Ramli, and my partner, Nurdini Akila binti Mazlan, would like to thank our respective speaker for her willingness and you for staying with us throughout this webinar. So before we end today's session, let's take a photo together. I would highly encourage everyone to switch on your camera for this photography session.
Hi, Dr.
Alright.
Aida. Nice to see you.
Hi, Dr.
How
Aida.
are you? How are you? Are you
Hi.
good? Yeah?
Alhamdulillah.
Yeah, thank you so much for coming,
No problem.
for being our guest. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. Let's take a nice photo, a nice group photo, and get everybody to on their cameras, please. Your friends. Okay. Thank you so much.
Okay, Shafika, are you ready, Shafika?
One, two,
Okay.
yes, yes. All right. One, two, three. All right.
Okay, so I
Okay. Thank
Okay.
you so much.
think that's all.
Thanks, girls.
All right.
Shafika.
Thank you,
All
Nurdini,
right. Thank you,
Shafika. Thank you
everyone.
very much.
Yeah. Thank you, madam. Thank you, everyone, also for participating in this
Okay.
webinar. With that, I end this
Thank you,
program here.
Iza.
Wabillahi taufiq wal hidayah. Assalamualaikum.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Thank you, Dr. Zawati. Thank you, Dr. Aida, for joining us. Thank you, everyone.